Day 4 of training camp in the books. Tomorrow is when the pads come on, so we really find out a lot more from tomorrow's practice and see where we're at. But one thing I've been kind of wondering about is our defense. Haven't heard a lot of things from the defense, and I get it. Offense can be a little bit more exciting when pads aren't on because can you block? Can you there's just certain things you can't do defensively, especially early on in training camp. So we've heard a lot about Laporta. Looks really good. We've got newcomer at wide receiver that we've been talking about. Goff and St. Brown have been playing really well. But good news is that in day 4 of training camp, the defense shows up more. And again, when you don't have pads on, there's a few ways you can show up. And it sounds like Dave Burkett of the Free Press wrote that a lot of batted balls at the line of scrimmage, a lot more active coverage, clear, blatant, like would-be sacks from Aiden Hutchinson. So let's take a look at some takeaways. We've got a few other takeaways. I'll get back to Laporta, continues to impress, but there's been defensive standouts, including Derek Barnes. We'll look at that in here in just a second. But finally, the offense was subdued. Again, I was talking about it. Jared Goff, St. Brown, unstoppable, can't catch them. Well, that was because it was in the red zone. A lot of that action yesterday was in the red zone, which early on in camp, no pads, that really kind of favors the offense. They know what they're doing. They know where they're going. It's tough to stop, especially St. Brown. But they said today they kind of put it back midfield, part of the field where defense has more of a chance and able to get after them. So they weren't able to push the defense deep down the field. The only offensive skill player to make any noise was, you guessed it, St. Brown, and most of the impact was after the catch. Again, you're not tackling, so you don't know for sure. 2 times on a quick out and a curl, St. Brown was able to find his blockers and get behind them for solid gains. His best reception came on a 25-yard bullet from Goff, easily the most impressive offensive play of the day. So I told you I was going to talk about defense, but just real quick, St. Brown is going to be incredible. I guess Goff texted Ben Johnson this offseason and said, yeah, St. Brown, huge season coming up. So, and it says it right here, a huge year. Jared Goff predicts huge year for Amon St. Brown. Absolutely. So if you look at a couple things that I want to point out is expanding roles for Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes. Jack Campbell was getting more snaps with the first team. Overall, he looked more comfortable and showed his range dropping into coverage. Now, remember, at Iowa, he did a lot of that. He was a stud. They kind of played the Tampa 2. He would be able to stay up for the run, but then also drop back and had a lot of interceptions and was a great coverage rating at Iowa. So people think he's clunky, big guy, when in fact he's really good, athletic, and can cover really well. He had the best coverage grade of anybody coming out of the draft at linebacker. Derek Barnes was on the other end of the Campbell snaps, shifting back to the 2s when the rookie moved up. Barnes once again had a pretty solid day, but his biggest gaffe came in the final practice session when he slipped, fell in coverage, and gave up a big play. So that's one of the things this is why we drafted Jack Campbell, and this is why it's going to make such a big difference on our defense. Derek Barnes has all the physical skills in the world, but there's little nuanced plays that lead to big plays, and that's how big plays happen for the other team. And it's so frustrating to see Derek Barnes overrun things, slip. There's always something, right, with him. I still think he's going to be good. I still think he can get it figured out. But Jack Campbell already has something. He's already with the ones. It's like, okay. So that really makes you wonder, okay, I like that, and that's what I want. So let's go to Hutchinson. Hutchinson, this is what I was talking about. Jumped out the gate with a sack and a tackle for loss on the first team series of practice, beating Brock Wright and Sam Laporta with power and agility. So it was reported that Sam Laporta is doing really well. One area he got exposed was a Hutchinson right around him, no questions asked, sack. So that's a tough one. That's tough for Laporta, but that's great to see Hutchinson. He should beat Laporta, so that's good as well. Charles Harris would likely have had a sack against Taylor Decker. Romeo Quara also got in the fun later, dispatching third-string offensive tackles for his own sack. So defensively, this is what I wanted to see, had to see, because we hadn't really heard a ton about the defense, because I think we were focused on the offense. So defense is looking really good, and I just want us to stay healthy and get to pads. And it sounds like that's what happened. Everything looks good. We're going into pads with basically everybody there. We know about some of the guys that, aren't basically available, and this shows it right here. Marvin Jones continues to rest. Emmanuel Mosley, we knew about him coming into it. It's going to take a few more weeks. We might not have him for the start of the regular season. It's almost like we kind of knew that, though, so that's okay. Hendon Hooker, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Jameson Williams. I'm okay with the Jameson Williams, and we haven't really talked about this, but I'm okay with it just because, again, he doesn't play until November. So there's just, yeah, you'd like him out there, but there's no need. Take another week off. I mean, just get fully healthy. I mean, what the heck? New additions to the injury report were Vaitai. And so we got to continue to watch this. Vaitai obviously has continued to struggle with injuries. So there will come a point where we will get rid of him because it's just, if you can't be on the field, you can't be on the field. So we'll continue to watch that. And Brian Branch. So Brian Branch did not appear to suffer an injury the day prior, so it wasn't clear why he was on the sidelines. We'll have to ask Dan Campbell on Friday morning's press conference. So make sure you tune back into the channel tomorrow. It is the big day. It's always been the big day when the first time the pads come on, because we've been talking about it here and just in this video. It's like, oh, he would have had a sack, or he probably would have been tackled, or he probably got through the. It's hard to know until actual pads come on. So make sure you check back into the channel when we check that out. Another thing I want to point out, our boy, just because we all love him, Tom Kennedy made a terrific catch down the seam during drills, but came into contact with a rookie, Jack Campbell, midair and landed awkwardly on his arm shoulder. Kennedy would not return to drills, but stayed on the field with his teammates the remainder of practice. Tom Kennedy, you just kind of know what's going to happen. He's going to make all the right plays. He's going to do exactly what he needs to, but he's going to get cut right at the end. He's going to make the practice squad, but then someone's going to get injured and he's going to come in when we need him in like week 4, make plays. And you're like, why don't we just have him all the time? But then he's like, not good enough quite. So Tom Kennedy, love him. Great to see that he's back making plays, and it just looks good. So again, I showed you a free press, or I mentioned free press. This is Pride of Detroit, if I hadn't mentioned that already. Pride of Detroit. And here, while the Lions are back in the second pair with John Kaminsky and Josh Paschal, Romeo Okwara, James Houston third, but they also split time with Julian Okwara. So the point here is, I want to switch back to the defense. Look at all of the depth and guys we have on the edges. You got Kaminsky and Paschal, who are they're edge hybrid. They can come in, guys. Romeo and James Houston, Julian Okwara. Obviously, you pair that with Aiden and Charles Harris. So it's like, man, just 3 years ago, we didn't have a defensive line. We had like Snacks Harrison. Like, I know he's not a defensive edge, but he had like Snacks, who we had this defensive line we thought was so good. It never really panned out. And now we've got edge rushers, like a lot of them. And do we have a bunch of elite pass rushers? No, not necessarily, but you've got Aiden, who is. Charles Harris could be good. And then you've got Kaminsky and Paschal, who are similar guys that can do really good things. We can get to the quarterback. In this league, you have to. It's like everyone knows it, but it's hard to get unless you have Brad Holmes. Thank you, Brad. You need to be able to stop the run. You need to be able to run the ball. Okay, got to do that. Then you've got to be able to get to the passer by rushing 4. Not every play, but man, when it's 3rd and 10 and you can rush 4, that's huge. 7 guys in coverage. You're getting pressure with 4. That is the formula. Now, can we do that consistently? Can we, the whole thing? We got to make sure we're watching that. But love it. Defense just looks better, more active. This and day 4 pads come on tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe. We'll be all over training camp, all of training camp into the season, going live more and more. Can't wait to see it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see all of you on the next one.